Here from the Metal Hammer thing. Yes, hello. Welcome to another thrilling instalment of Dom's Iron Sandwich, the unfortunately titled waste of mine and everyone else's time that continues to crawl pathetically along like a man with broken legs. Yes, so the one that well, what part of the problem of doing these is that there aren't always albums coming out that are worth talking about. I mean, there's tons of brilliant music coming out all the time, but a lot of it is just albums that I think are really great. And if I just sit here going, "Oh, it's really great," then it's not that exciting. Certainly not that exciting for me. Not that bothered how you feel, to be honest. But anyway, the album that has probably been, metal-wise, been discussed more than any other over the last few weeks is the debut album by King 810, Memoirs of a Murderer. Now, I have to, if you read Metal Hammer, you will know. Excuse me. Wow, windy pops. You will may be aware, if you read all of it. You might deliberately avoid my bits. I don't know. You will be aware that I've been to Flint, Michigan, where King 810 are from, and I interviewed them there and spent a couple of days hanging around with them. And so I guess I come to review this album from a slightly unfair position in that I've been there, met them, and I've got a bit more of an insight into what's going on behind this band than the vast numbers of people online who seem to think they've got it all fucking sussed out already, and that they've decided that King 810 are one thing or another, and that there's no need for any further debate. Well, no, perhaps there isn't any need for any further debate. That's the problem with the internet. It's full of fucking idiots. That debate is a kind of rather nebulous term that really just basically involves exchanging homosexual slurs, doesn't it? Really, but anyway, so yeah, I guess I'm in a fairly unfair position. But the main reason I wanted to do this, I wrote a review in the new issue of Metal Hammer. So if you want to know what I think of the album, you can just read that and switch this rubbish off. But the truth is that I feel very passionate about this band and about this record, and I kind of want to start by countering some of the nonsense that I've seen people writing. I've seen it countless times over the last few weeks. People talking about the hype machine and how King 810 are being hyped, and how record labels are, basically forcing magazines like Metal Hammer to write about this band, and they're all with people at Metal Hammer must be getting loads of money to push this shit band, blah 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 blah. And it's well, no. A, I don't earn a lot of money in the first place, even for just writing for Metal Hammer. Secondly, I wish fucking record labels would say, well, we've got this band, we'll give you 200 grand if you write nice things about them for the next 4 years. I mean, that would be brilliant if I liked the band. If I didn't like the band, I'd just say no. But, it would be wonderful if it were that way, but it doesn't. The reason why, there's one fundamental reason why. Actually, no, I shall address, before I... God, sorry, shouldn't do these things in the morning. The hype thing, I want to address that first. I haven't seen any hype for King 810 at all. I don't know what people's idea of hype is. Admittedly, in Metal Hammer, we've given them a lot of coverage. We gave them a massive feature to start off with. But there's two reasons for that. One, the album is amazing. It's a brilliant record. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I disagree strongly. I think it's an absolute masterpiece, particularly for a debut album. I think it's astonishing. But the other reason is that... there's actually something to write about here. There's actually something to write about. There's actually a story. There's the lead singer of the band, David Gunn, actually has something to say. He has a very interesting and I think unique perspective on life and the world. And it's not just as a result of living somewhere where people have to carry guns. This is a guy with a real vision and a lot of immense talent, really. And I think it's so unusual. The amount of cookie cutter metalcore bands that we get asked to write about, and that we kind of have to cover because they're popular with the scene and all the rest of it. All that kind of stuff, and lots of stuff that we're just fond of because it's old school metal and we love all that kind of stuff. Those bands can often have the most amazing music, but to talk to, there's really nothing to say, especially really young bands. They've got fuck all to say for the most part, because they've just formed a band when they were in their late teens, and then they've been in a band. All they've got to talk about is being in a band. They don't have any kind of great philosophical point to make, or lyrics that make you, you know, genuinely sit and think. You know, it's just doesn't. I'm not saying these bands are crap necessarily, although a lot of them are, but they just have nothing interesting to say or to contribute. You know, and it's great. It keeps the flow of music going and all the rest of it. But a band like King 810 come along, and they're genuinely unique. I don't, you know. I think this idea that they've been hyped is hilarious. It's called a promotional campaign, and pretty much any band that's signed to a significant label with a decent budget will have a promotional campaign. And to be honest, a lot of their promotional campaign has been done through Metal Hammer because we're so enthusiastic about the band and the album. If we weren't, and we thought it was dog shit, we wouldn't have touched it with a barge pole. We'd have just reviewed the album, given them a small piece and whatever, you know, it's nothing. I don't know. I think people like to assume that it's all incredibly cynical and that, you know, we're sat laughing in some swanky bar somewhere with executives from the record label, you know, snorting coke and drinking fucking whatever that champagne's called, Cristal. Sorry, I had to think about that. I've never drunk any in my life, obviously. But the reality is a lot more disappointing, particularly for music journalists. You know, I don't get paid any extra for being nice about bands on big labels. You know, God, I wish I did. I've said some lovely things about Iron Maiden. You think EMI would put their hands in their pockets, wouldn't you? But anyway, so that's all bollocks for a start. And like I say, there's something genuinely intriguing about this. Now, the other thing that I've read a lot online, a lot of people's view of King 810 seems to have been based on the one or two songs that were released prior to the release of the actual album. Now, I can understand people hearing Kill 'Em All or Fat Around the Heart and assuming that is the entirety of what King 810 do, and that having heard those songs out of context, that all King 810 do is sing about Flint and guns and how hard they are and all the rest of it. Well, firstly, I'll address that one. If you listen to the lyrics of Kill 'Em All and Fat Around the Heart, if what you come away with is that they're trying to be hard men, then I'm afraid you're probably a bit thick. Just try again. Listen to the lyrics again. This is not a celebration of a lifestyle. This is not gangster rap from the early 90s. This is not, you know, this is not people jumping up and down going, "This is brilliant. We love having guns." You know, it's there's a real sense of desperation in those songs, and frankly, David addresses it directly. You know, about saying that it's not great that they have to live that way. You know, if they were just showing off and going, "We're fucking hard men," I don't think I'd be terribly interested in it. But there you go. Also, I think that I've read a lot of people say, "Oh, it just sounds like Slipknot. It just sounds like a shit version of Slipknot." Well, in a very basic way, one or two of the riffs do have a certain air of early Slipknot to them. I'll give you that. But where are all these hundreds of bands that have followed in Slipknot's wake that sound like Slipknot? I'm not aware of any that spring to mind. And if you're going to copy somebody, which I don't think King 810 are doing anyway, but even if they were, why not copy one of the most successful metal bands that's ever existed? Just an idea. I don't, you know, I think there's some similarity between King 810 and Slipknot, but it's got very little to do with music. I think it's to do with the reasons why they do it and the integrity involved in the band, you know. Now again, before I start talking about the album, there is this integrity issue. You will read a lot of things online about people, you know, especially people from around Flint and people who've seen the band live in the past, you know, before they were signed and all the rest of it. A lot of people slag them off saying, "Oh, their fans are idiots, they turn up and stab people and set fire to things." Well, I don't know whether that's true or not. But having met the band, it doesn't surprise me that their gigs are a bit on the lively side. These aren't people, you know, greatly encumbered by a sense of physical fear. But at the same time, you know, why believe what a few people say on the internet in that context and then not believe me when I say I've met them, been there, spoken to them, and I feel that there's something genuinely special going on. You know, people pick and choose what they want to believe, and that's fine. But it's irritating because you just want to shake people and go, "Oh, for fuck's sake, this album is incredible." Because it is. And I'll tell you why. Now, Memoirs of a Murderer is a concept record. The concept being, really, it's the innermost thoughts of David Gunn. And I know that he wrote a lot of the lyrics to these when he was in jail, which is apparently different from prison. Not prison, it's jail. It's like you get banged up for a short period of time for whatever, I don't know. But apparently there's a tiered system in the States, which I didn't know about. But anyway, he has been in jail. And he wrote a lot of these things. He didn't have a pen and paper to write them down, so he memorised a lot of the lyrics and wrote them in his head. And and I find that fascinating for a start anyway, because that gives his lyrics a fairly untutored and raw kind of feel to them. But it's so genuine and authentic and sincere. It's untrue. These are the innermost. He even says at the beginning, these are my memoirs. I mean, obviously, is he a murderer? No, he's not. He's not killed anybody, as far as I'm aware. But the point is that he lives in a situation, in a world that, yes, partly voluntarily, partly involuntarily, he finds himself in this situation whereby he has to carry a gun all the time. There's violence on the streets. Someone could shoot you at any second in Flint. I mean, he said that to me while I was sitting there next to him outside the King 810 posse's house. He said somebody could pull up in the car right now and shoot both of us. Now, he wasn't saying it to impress me, and I did kind of. It was a little bit squeaky bum time, but I could see his point. It's a little bit Wild West out there, and it's kind of, maybe to some degree what King 810 do kind of inflates the reality of it, but I suspect it doesn't. Another thing that he said to me was that actually people think all we sing about is guns and violence. If we were representing it truthfully, that's all there would be, because that is their reality on a day-to-day basis. And that's my point about this album. Musically, I'll come to that in a minute. Lyrically, there is so much going on this record. It's not just about the guns. It's not just about the having to be a tough guy on the streets of Flint. If you think that's all it is, then you've not listened to it. You've really not listened to it, or you've not heard it anyway. I've heard some people dissing David's lyrics. People being critical of his lyrics. Whatever, it's a matter of taste. But to say his lyrics are bad, I think is ridiculous. They're for a new metal band, in the sense of new as opposite of old, obviously. To have lyrics like that, I think is extraordinary. I think there's some amazing lines on this album. I think there's some, I like his spoken word pieces. I know they're not to everyone's taste, but I think they're great. And the depth of what's going on Memoirs of a Murderer is extraordinary. They're on the surface level, yes, it's about survival on the streets of Flint. On a much deeper level, there's a whole lot of philosophical, religious, David's innermost thoughts put into a variety of quite strange contexts, and references from everything from like Haitian voodoo, just so much stuff going on. And I think if you're not prepared to, if you don't like the music, then you're not going to give it enough time to sit and absorb the thing. So that's fine. I get that. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I'm not going to waste time listening to an album that I've heard once and thought was kind of meh. That's fine. But if there's anything about it that grabs you, then do immerse yourself in it, because I think it's fascinating. Now, on a musical level, I think it's extraordinary. There are plenty of the heavy tracks. There's some. I think Killable's great. I think Fat Around the Heart is fucking amazing. There's a couple of other heavy ones that I really, really love. Desperate Lovers, I think, is a fantastic song. War Outside, just absolutely incredible. And that heavier side of it, I just think it's great. There's something really feral and uncontrolled and untamed about the music and David's vocal delivery. This is not somebody who's trying to put in lovely, sweet, clean vocals to appeal to the pop kids. This is totally 100% from the heart, and you can tell that just by listening to him. But on a musical level, once you get beyond the heavy tracks, there's an awful lot of stuff going on. Now, you may have heard the track Eyes, which I don't even know how to describe that. It's kind of a ballad. It's kind of electronic-based ballad. It's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of about wanting to be dead, but at the same time, it's about much more than that. It's remarkable piece, I think. Devil Don't Cry, which is amazing. Now, I had a conversation with David. I heard Devil Don't Cry for the first time. I thought, wow, that sounds like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and it really does. Nick Cave could sing that, and it was on a Nick Cave album. You wouldn't bat an eyelid. David's never heard Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds in his life. I doubt the rest of the band have either. So I don't. Where that comes from, I don't know, but it's an extraordinary song. It's. I think it's genuinely moving, but whatever. I know we're all supposed to be extraordinarily cynical the whole time now, because that's the cool way. But there's just a lot of that kind of interesting stuff going on the album. The whole album flows very well. There's a lot of kind of interludes and strange noises and kind of eerie atmospherics and all that, and it all just fits together for me. I don't think there's too much of the guns and violence on the street stuff at all. I think that's necessary for the point to be made, because that's the reality of those people that are making the record. But I also think on an artistic level, what they've achieved on Memoirs of a Murderer was extraordinary. How many debut albums have you heard that have that kind of power? I don't, and that polarise people in the same way. I mean, so many debut albums come out by metalcore bands and, thrash bands or whatever, and people just kind of go, yeah, it's all right. I don't think anyone's going to say that about King 810, or if they are saying that, then again, they're not really paying attention. I quite like the idea that some people think it's absolutely fucking awful, because at least that means it's getting a reaction, which is what it should do, because it's absolutely unique in the context of the current metal scene. It's just, there's nothing else like it out there at all. And I find it ridiculously exciting. I'm just so bored of people being fucking cynical about everything all the time. And I know, Pop Kettle and all that. But I try really hard not to be cynical. Every now and then Nickelback will release an album and I'll be consumed with rage because they're the worst fucking thing in the world. But, generally speaking, I go into listening to music with a positive outlook. I want things to be brilliant, and it's very rare for something to be as brilliant as Memoirs of a Murderer. I think it's extraordinary, and I hope that their live shows live up to it. I think people really should stop talking about the hype. What hype? What are you on about? No more hype than any other band on Roadrunner Records or any other band out there. Press coverage is not the same thing as hype. And unlike some magazines, we actually cover things because we believe in them. A lot of the time, it's don't know, strange one. Anyway, there you go. King 810, Memoirs of a Murderer. It's out now. You've probably heard it. It was available to stream in its entirety and all the rest of it. There's some brilliant documentary videos on the Metal Hammer website, which I heartily recommend. And if you haven't read my piece in the last issue of the magazine, the one with Opeth on the cover, then I humbly request that you do, because I'm quite proud of it. And I should be going to see them in September when they tour the UK. I think they're fucking brilliant. So there you go. That's the end of it. Right. I'm going to go and finish my coffee. I'm not going to go. It's just there. I'm just going to sit here. And that's it. Thanks for watching, folks. Another Iron Sandwich coming soon. Hopefully it will be more entertaining than this one. But then I say that every time and it never is. Oh well. Cheers, folks. Bye.